Right now, the ministers have been announced. I don't see any circumstances under which any of them will be disqualified by Parliament. If it happens, it will be strange, And I think it's important for us to look at the history of parliamentary vetting. Massa, you are a member of Parliament. This is a novelty. In the past, we were not vetting our ministers. Okay. At the time when we had the parliamentary system of government, purely parliamentary system of government, I don't remember us vetting ministers in Parliament. At the time that we had a purely presidential system, I don't also remember. I think this came about when we had a merger between the presidential system and also the parliamentary system.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand why when we had a purely parliamentary system, there was no vetting. Because the vetting process is supposed to look at whether or not persons nominated are qualified, to be ministers. And when we had the parliamentary system, it was clear that the utmost qualification for ministerial position is qualification to be member of Parliament. It was then assumed that if a person was a member of Parliament, that person need not go through another vetting process.
Right.
Now we have a hybrid situation where people are coming in who are not members of Parliament, and therefore a lot of people think that it is right to check their bona fides. Is that how they say it? Their bona fides or bona fides, whatever.
Fide, yeah.
To check those. I have no problem with that, except that a lot of times the process of vetting appears to be completely abused. And when you have people sitting on the parliamentary vetting committee using that process for self-vindication, I think it's an abuse of process. When you have the process being used, to justify previous political stances and so on, I think it's an abuse of process. And then I've also worried over this period about the lack of rigor in the vetting. I witnessed one vetting process where somebody who had been nominated as a minister was asked, "Do you go to church?" And then the person said, "Oh yeah, I go to church." "Oh, you must therefore know how to sing hymns." Say, "Oh, I sing hymns." He said, "Can you sing a hymn for us?" This is preposterous. And this is happening in the view of all of us. Is that how to vet ministers? They come and sing Methodist hymns and you approve them. Are you vetting them as choir masters or what? Absolutely strange. And yesterday, was it yesterday? I think yesterday, something similar happened. You know that the what do you call it? Your orders, your regulations, standing orders and so on, prescribes the language that ought to be used in Parliament.
Yes.
So that language ought to be used in the sittings of all parliamentary committees. Unfortunately, I saw the minority leader use language which is not prescribed. And his excuse was that, "Oh, we've seen in your CV that you speak a number of languages, and we are testing your proficiency in those languages." Where did that come from? Is that why we set up the vetting committee? Has that become the new Ghana Institute of Languages?
Yeah.
What is this? So look, the vetting committee should stick to its mandate. And its mandate is just to find out whether persons nominated by the president are qualified to be ministers. And perhaps also look at their ability, intellectual and so on, to execute the functions which are assigned to them as ministers, and stop the comedy. I think the comedy sometimes is too much.
Yeah.
The comedy is too much. And unnecessary misuse of the platform to draw attention to some people and so on, it's sickening. I'm told that one person lasted 6 hours in the vetting. How? What would justify that? 6 hours.
That's interesting. Collins, I'm sure that Mr. Kwesi Pratt's concerns are concerns that I'm sure you've heard in some other quarters as well. I mean, the casual nature of the vetting process, it looked too friendly. It wasn't as thorough as one would have expected. And also, at some point, it was beginning to look more like you scratch my back, I scratch your back-ish kind of thing. You know, it's too friendly. And that these are people who are being paid with the taxpayers' money to go and do a specific job for us. We want to be convinced that the person who, I mean, these are people who are going to be running our lives, you know, in somewhat. And so we have to be sure about whether they are really the right materials or they are actually cut out for that job, you know. And so when you're sitting with people and you're asking about whether they can sing hymns and, you know, asking them about whether they can speak certain kind of languages and so on, it doesn't make us feel as though you smell the coffee, you know the times in which we're in. When some very, very, very deep, you know, economic, you know, circumstances. And so we ought to be able to, we ought to be able to know the mood of the people and take the work we're doing as parliamentarians, or take the work that you're doing as parliamentarians much more seriously. I don't know what you think about this.
You know, sometimes doing vetting, and when the tension is just too much, you have to find a way of just diffusing the tension. Now, with a specific reference to the tree, one of the things that happens at the vetting is to scrutinize the CVs. Now, on the CV of Mr. Haruna, he had indicated that he speaks 4 languages. He speaks English fluently, he speaks Chi, Dagbani also, he mentioned, and Hausa also. So the minority leader sought to just scrutinize the CV, and I asked him a question, whether indeed, as he put there that he speaks Chi, whether he can speak Chi. I'm not too sure that is out of place, totally.
But also how necessary, how important is that?
I'm coming.
Okay.
Sometime during vetting, as I said,
okay,
you after the hard questions and going into deep technocrat issues, sometimes you just have to soften the grounds, make the nominee comfortable, allow him to relax a bit before you start hitting the person with all those things. So sometimes these things are done just to calm nerves down. And you could realize that a lot of the people burst into laughter when the minority leader said he knows where his tree is coming from. And then he said, oh, of course, my wife is an Ashanti. So I think sometimes it's not out of place necessarily to bring calm attention down. But I agree with you that it's a very serious business. It's a serious business because you are going to head an education ministry. You are going to head the finance ministry. The decisions you take as a minister affect everybody.
These are consequential ministries.
Absolutely. Yeah. It affects everybody. Yeah. And so it's important that you go deep to ensure that the person really understands where he or she is being taken to.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, as for qualification to be a minister, once you're a member of parliament, you qualify to be a minister. Yeah. Because the constitution is quite clear that the qualification to be a minister is somebody who qualifies to also be a member of parliament. It's there. It's quite clear. So that for qualification, and you realize that sometime when I was going for my vetting, the chairman was like, once you're a member of parliament, you first qualify. However, this process is to test your understanding of where you are going to and all that. So, Uncle, I'll just please, sometimes I think these are things that are done just to calm things down. But of course, as I said, it's a serious business, and I don't think it's a platform for jokes. It's not a platform to just, as it were, see friends pass through and then just come to be ministers. It's a very serious platform.